Very good morning, it's Penuel the Black Pen. My voice isn't fully healed as yet, but I was triggered this morning by an article I read, and I just wanted to raise a few pointers. So I'm not going to go into detail because I think this needs to be an ongoing conversation. There was an incident of alleged racism at Michaelhouse in Balgowan in KwaZulu, which affected a black scholar from St. John's College from Johannesburg. They were playing sports, hockey in particular, and the black boy claims that he was called the K word, which is a kafir for those that may not know, which is a racial slur from the apartheid government in particular. You can read up on the article, on the story, on Google, etc. First point I want to raise is we need to be very careful of only reporting racism, xenophobia, corruption, only when it has to do with big brands and big names. The reason this story is probably getting more spotlight than normal is because it's St. John's College and it's Michaelhouse, two of the most expensive private schools in South Africa and arguably on the continent. There's a lot of incidents of racism. I've experienced a lot of racism myself growing up. I played rugby throughout school, so I experienced many horrific incidents of racism myself. But obviously, because you're at an unknown school in Newcastle High, no one really cares as much, and we need to be very careful of that. Number two, we need to be protective in situations like this, especially when it pertains to young children. It's very easy for us to want to attack, let's say, the white child. Number one, it's alleged. So decent investigations need to be underhead. You can't just assume because of our racial past, which is very triggering, that it must be. Why would the black child lie? No. Let's do a thorough investigation pertaining to these incidents, number one. And number two, let's protect both kids. Because both of these kids have to grow up and become functioning adults in South Africa. If the white child happens to be racist, this is our chance to counsel that child and educate that child on the history of our country, on why words like kafir are such bad words to be used and how they trigger certain people, even people that white person might care about. We need to be careful with our black kids today who have been inundated with George Floyd, Black Lives Matter, wokeness, who may not really understand what racism is. And at any chance that another child or a teacher says something they don't like, they call it racism just because that child and that teacher happens to be white. And if you were to ask them that if this was said by another black person, for people that are feminist or about women empowerment, if you like, but if another woman said this to you, it should have been fine. So clearly the issue is only the race or maybe the gender of the other person. So we need to be very careful. And when these incidents occur, we need to think about rehabilitation. I know it's very triggering. I know our past is atrocious and it harms a lot of people. And I know to this day, there's a lot of white racists. There's a lot of black people who are victims of racism to this day. But we need to remember that we're trying to build and fix our society. And that means we need to rehabilitate racists. We need to fix them where we can. If we can't, of course, we'll say, look, we did our best. And then we'll isolate them and shun them from society, if that's all we can do. And we need to be careful about being overly sensitive and being unnecessary. Because sometimes there are false allegations. Sometimes there are instances where black kids end up hurting a lot of white kids because they just thought it would be cool to be like, oh yeah, it was racist. And then everyone, of course, gets sensitive and nervous because they're like, oh, we can't have this happening. Let's try and protect our kids. Let's try and educate our kids. Let's try and counsel our kids. And where, of course, the parents are at fault, where the teachers are at fault, where society is at fault, we need to fix the parents. We need to fix the teachers. We need to fix society. We need to fix ourselves. Let's create a better world, man. Penalism is about non-racialism. That means finding the good in people, regardless of their race. And where there are bad people, regardless of race, let's try and fix them. Let's try and punish them. Let's try and create a better world. Penuel the Black Pen. Love you guys, man.